Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Okay, so it is going to be the second, you can say, volume of, or the second part of our lecture about Imam Bukhari radiallahu anhu. And again, just I want to let you know about one very important issue. There are all the time, majority of the people, there are the people who do not care about what truth is, but they care about what our leaders are saying. Okay, so for example, I did have some certain dialogues in which, for example, I would give a proof, but then my, for example, statements wouldn't be answered, but only going around or even just saying, you are wrong, and then all of the, mashallah, brothers saying, oh, mashallah, he has been destroyed. So then, but my statement is, it was too strong for the other person to respond, so then he did use the tricky way, okay, to use the voice of the audience, just to, so then all of the voice, I would just underneath of the voice, so all of them noises, Allahu Akbar, so then everything would be disappeared. So I say that exactly the same thing happened to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So once, if you remember, when Allah revealed the ayah in which Allah said, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, antum ma ta'buduna hasabu jahannam antum laha waridun." Okay, means you are, and whatever you do worship, all of you are going to be the fuel of the hell, and you, all of you, will go to fall into it. And then Allah says, "Law kana haula alihatan ma waraduha." If them things, the idols that you are worshipping, if them things would be gods, they wouldn't fall, they wouldn't enter the hell. Okay, so then anyway, so when Rasulullah was making this recitation, someone called Abdullah ibn Masud, one of the mushriks of Quraysh, stood up, said, "Oh Muhammad, you are saying that whatever and ever worshipped is going to fall into the hell." Rasulullah said yes. So then he said, in that case, we are happy to go wherever Jesus goes, because Jesus is worshipped also. And everyone shouted, okay, saying, "Oh," So maybe in our language it would be Subhanallah, Allah, so all of them. So then, so they thought that actually Rasulullah was crushed and destroyed. But then the point of Abdullah bin Zib'ara didn't meet the point, the statement of Rasul is totally different thing. Yeah. But people do not care. The most important thing is just to crush. Okay, so I say, majority of the people are like that. Okay, but it's only the minority of the people whom Allah wants to guide, they actually listen. Okay, they listen. Allah praise them, saying, "Alladhina yastami'una al-qawl." It's those people who listen to the speech, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ, and then they follow the best one, the most virtuous one. Okay, but the very minority. Okay, so for example, inshallah, you will see after our first lecture, or even the second lecture in which we are going to speak about Imam Bukhari, you will see there will be many criticism, and mashallah, brothers will shout saying, "Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, he is this, he is that," but then my points will never get answered, or even they will answer, but it will not be answered, but it's like way of hypnotizing, But my question will stay there, unanswered. Why? Because that's what truth is, Okay, so Imam Bukhari is not that Hanafi Maulana from, for example, Uzbekistan or Turkey or subcontinent, and he's not Ash'ari Maliki, okay, and he's not, for example, the person who does Qawali from subcontinent, okay, as well as he's not that angry man who goes around criticizing the people, okay. I did describe Imam Bukhari according to the authentic sources, including his Sahih al-Bukhari, okay. So the brothers who are, for example, who will be using Imam Bukhari as their head, so for example, next time if we'll have some dialogue, if they will say Imam Bukhari said so, means Imam Bukhari is proof for them. In that case, they have to accept the rest of the things of Imam Bukhari which we did mention. Okay, maybe one of the heaviest ones is, for example, Imam Bukhari accepting the urf, okay, or accepting the religion of the previous nations, which no one accepted except Hanafis, okay, or accepting, for example, every day, can you imagine that you find me every day going next to the grave of Rasul and writing something, every day you will find me there, okay, after 1 month, what you will say about me? Okay, so if you are honest, you have to say the same about Imam Bukhari, because I'm not differing to him, am I right? Because so till Imam Bukhari finished off his book called At-Tarikh, most likely it's Tarikh Saghir, Wallahu Alam, as well as afterward he came back to write the, for example, the topics of Sahih al-Bukhari, and it's not only the matter of 2 days, okay, but it's long period of a time. So every day he would be there writing. So what you would say about that person who all the time, every day comes, okay, during the night as well as during the daytimes, and sits next to the grave of Rasul and then writes his book. What do you call that person? So that's what Imam Bukhari is, according to you. Okay, anyway. So as we did mention that when brothers, they use Imam Bukhari in the dialogue as a proof, so they use Imam Bukhari either his opinion or either his book. So in terms of the opinion of Imam Bukhari, we did finish that. Okay, means not any of the members for Madhahib as well as Salafis, not any of them can use Imam Bukhari. Why? Because Imam Bukhari disagreed with all of us. I did mention that. Okay, so next time, if I will see someone, doesn't matter, Hanafi, Shafi, Salafi, Maliki, saying that what Imam Bukhari said, I will give him the rest of the masail in which he disagrees with him. If you are honest, so then follow in the rest of the masail. So if you're not following in the rest, so then do not necessitate, okay, do not force me to accept this masala which you're bringing, because he's not a proof. Okay, anyway. And the second part of the discussion could be, you may say, okay, so whatever mentioned in Bukhari actually is accepted. Okay, so I say, if you mean by being accepted authenticity, I say we Hanafis agree. But others criticize some of the hadith. I'm going to mention some of the hadith of Imam Bukhari, not about saying this is obligated, but actually this is weak. We Hanafis never said that. We say all of the hadith of Bukhari is authentic. Okay, but then authenticity does not necessitate us to follow it. Okay, and if you remember, just go back to the first lecture. I gave you an examples from Quran. Quran is mutawatir, but some of the hadith, some of the ayat is not acted upon. Okay, for example, again, just to increase your knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. So in which Allah says, O people, do you think that you're going to enter paradise? But then Allah says, وَلَمَّا, but not yet Allah found, not yet Allah knows the people who are truthworthy. So when they said, just by saying La ilaha illallah, we are going to enter paradise. So Allah says, لَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ, not yet Allah knows. So in this, the literal meaning of this ayah means, Allah doesn't know, when you say La ilaha illallah, Allah doesn't know if you're truthworthy or not. Till Allah tests you, and if you stay, if you follow what you said, means now Allah knows. So now question, do any of the Muslim sects believe this? No. We say Allah knows everything pre-eternally. There is no starting, beginning point of knowledge of God. There is no, because God is pre-eternal. Knowledge of God is pre-eternal. But ayah says that Allah not yet knows. Okay, or in different ayah, Allah says, فَالْيَوْمَ نَنْسَاهُمْ, today we are going to forget them. Okay, the disbelievers, كَمَا نَسُوا لِقَاءَ يَوْمِهِمْ هَذَا, as they did forget meeting of Yawm al-Qiyamah, that they are going to meet us. Okay, so question, does it mean that in Yawm al-Qiyamah Allah is going to forget? We do not believe so. So ayah is authentic, it's mutawatir, but do we accept it into our aqidah? We say no. Why? Because it's metaphoric meaning. Okay, means not each single ayah we take it as it is. Some of them are obligated, and some of them is not literal meaning but different meaning. Okay, so if that is applicable on Quran, so do you think that Bukhari is better than Quran? Allah describes Quran saying, لا يأتيه الباطل من بين يديه ولا من خلفه. So it is only Quran that does not get any batil, any error from the front side or from the back side. Means whatever Allah said about the past nations, there is no error in that. And whatever Allah predicted in Quran about the future, that there is no error in there also. So that is the specification of only Quran. Okay, and Allah challenged the people by Quran, not by anything else. Okay, so we should not equal anything else with Quran. Okay, so Quran is the most perfect, but yet there are some ayat which is obligated, but it doesn't scratch the authenticity. Okay, so it is that. So I say authenticity of Sahih al-Bukhari does not mean that each single hadith in there is acted upon. Now I'm going to give you an example. So the members of four madhahib made ijma that there is not any single weak hadith, but yet we have some brothers here that they criticized not the acting upon the hadith, but actually authenticity of the hadith. They say it's weak. Okay, inshallah, now we're going to go through all of them. So first of all, it is a hadith which we did mention in our previous lectures. Hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Rasulullah ﷺ says, فقدت أمة من بني إسرائيل لا يدرى ما فعلت ولا أراها إلا الفأر ألا ترونها إذا وضع لها ألبان الإبل لم تشربه وإذا وضع لها ألبان الشاء شربته. قال أبو هريرة فحدثت هذا الحديث كعبا فقال أنت سمعت من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قلت نعم. قال ذلك مرارا قلت أقرأ التوراة. Okay, so it is authentic hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. Rasulullah says one nation of Banu Israel was lost. Okay, and then I think that it is actually mice, because look at the mice. When you give the milk of the camel, it does not drink, but when you give it milk of the sheep, it drinks. Okay, so then Abu Hurairah said, I told this hadith to I narrated this hadith to Ka'b al-Ahbar. Okay, and then he asked me for many times, did you hear Rasulullah saying it? So then Abu Hurairah said, of course I did. And after all of that, he said that Abu Hurairah said that I said to Ka'b al-Ahbar, why you do not believe me that I've heard Rasulullah saying it? Do you think that I read Old Gospels, Old Testament? Okay, and as you know, so after this hadith, in the commentary, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani says, وَكَأَنَّهُمَا, so the hadith narrated from Abu Hurairah, okay, so he says Abu Hurairah and Ka'b, so most likely جميعا لم يبلغهما حديث Ibn Masud. So he says most likely Abu Hurairah and Ka'b, they have never heard the hadith of Ibn Masud, in which Rasulullah ﷺ says, when he was talking about the monkeys and the porks, so he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَجْعَلْ لِلْمَسْخِ نَسْلًا وَلَا عَقِبًا. So Ibn Masud said, Rasulullah said that Allah, whenever He transforms some nation into the animals, Allah doesn't give a descendant to them. Okay, and then Rasulullah said, the porks and monkeys, they were before and they were even after. Okay, so Hadith of Bukhari, this one is not accepted by IJMA. But does it mean that now we are saying that Hadith is weak? Of course not. Hadith is authentic. Okay, but the meaning is actually not accepted, because whenever Allah curses and transforms some animal, some nation into the animal, they do not stay for long. And even there is hadith of Tabari, okay, narrated in his book called Tahzib al-Athar by Ibn Masud, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, in which Rasulullah says, لم يعش مسخ قط فوق ثلاثة أيام ولم يأكل ولم يشرب ولم ينسل. Means transformed nation, they never lived for more than 3 days, and they never eaten, and they never had descendants. Okay, so I say this hadith is perfect example for two statements that we do all the time. First one is not it's the statement in which we say not each single hadith is in Bukhari acted upon. So this hadith is rejected by ijma. That's first statement. And the second statement we say sometimes there could be some hadith in Bukhari controversial to some hadith which is in different books. For example, Tahzib al-Athar of Tabari. Okay, so it is not even one of the 6 books. Okay, so it's very far from the 6 books. So we are giving superiority to the hadith of Tabari above the hadith of Bukhari. Okay, so we say just being in Bukhari doesn't mean that this is above the rest of the Hadithi collections. Okay? Controversiality, we look into the meaning and many other things to find out which one of the Hadith are more reliable. Just by being in Bukhari doesn't mean that it's superior on the rest of the Hadith. But in terms of the conditions of the authenticity, 100% the conditions of Imam Bukhari is much above the conditions of the rest of the authors. Yeah.
So Sheikh, would it be correct to say that the hadith in Bukhari about the mice, for example,
Yeah.
is more authentic?
100%, no doubt.
Even
No
compared to the other hadiths you
Of course,
use?
no doubt, in terms of condition. But no, even for example, we do not say that Imam Bukhari believed on this, but then, because Imam Bukhari did describe some conditions, saying that I'm going to narrate the hadith based only on these conditions. So he knew that there are many other hadiths, but not any of the rest of the hadiths met his conditions. So he did not narrate any of them. But it does mean that Imam Bukhari believed that the mice are the lost tribe of the ancient. We never said that, you know.
And did Imam Bukhari, presumably he himself didn't say that in my book,
Yeah.
not only are all the hadiths meeting my conditions, but I personally believe...
No, never. He says that I'm going to narrate the hadith based on them conditions. Okay.
So it's not like he has belief.
Oh, of course not.
Okay.
No. Okay, so that's the first example. The second example, again, hadith is in Bukhari. Not only Bukhari, it's muttafaqun alayhi, means Bukhari and Muslim. Okay, so عن أبي هريرة again قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لعن الله السارق يسرق البيضة فتقطع يده ويسرق الحبل فتقطع يده. So Rasulullah said, may Allah curse the thief, the one who steals, because he steals one egg and then his hand will be chopped off, or he will steal a thread and his hand will be chopped off. By ijma, we made ijma that anyone who steals one egg, he will never be chopped off. Hadith is muttafaq alayh, Bukhari Muslim. So now, am I criticizing Bukhari? Am I saying that hadith is weak? No, I say hadith is authentic. But authenticity didn't force us to accept it. But by ijma, hadith is rejected. Okay? Another hadith.
Sheikh,
Yeah.
just a quick question. When you say rejected,
Yeah.
Obviously I think people will react, they'll say like, oh, what do you mean you're rejecting?
Yeah.
Does it mean like you reject it as in you believe Rasulullah didn't say it?
No,
or does it mean we don't...
take its meaning into the fiqh.
So we don't take it as something which we're going to act upon.
Yeah, so it's not acted upon. But it is authentic, no doubt.
So from Aqidah point of view, this is a bit silly question, but if some ignorant person said, like they heard this hadith,
Yeah.
and they said it's in Bukhari, and he said, but I don't believe Rasulullah said that. It's a bit different. I'm not going to act on it.
Yeah.
So
because
in today's...
authenticity is there. So I do believe that most likely Rasulullah did say that, because hadith is authentic. Okay? But maybe it was some certain very specific, very tight occasion. Or maybe Rasulullah meant the metaphoric mean, or maybe Rasulullah exaggerated, okay, or maybe some of the narrator didn't understand what Rasulullah said. So there could be many things. But in terms of did Rasulullah said, I say most likely, because it is in Bukhari, so the condition of Bukhari is very strict.
Would it be sinful for an ignorant person, or just even not, just say someone in today, they did say, I don't believe Rasulullah said that. Is it sinful? Or is it sinful? Would they be excused on... so if they know it's in Bukhari and the condition is strict, and they're saying, but I cannot believe Rasulullah would say, maybe not this, but some other thing like the mice.
Which is in Bukhari. I say, for example, we Hanafis, we say rejecting the mutawatir, it may constitute kufr. But rejecting the ahad, which is this one, as well as the mice. So if someone is rejecting it without interpretation, without any proof, so we say it is bid'ah. Okay? But your example is, so we need to ask, are you saying that Rasulullah didn't say it based on the many other ahadith, or are you saying it just in your own understanding?
Just even on my desire, just like...
So I say it is fisq, and it is maybe most likely it is bid'ah. Wallah, to reject the khabar al-ahad with no reason in Hanafi madhab is bid'ah.
So like major sin?
It's in this You mean, for example, the chopping off?
Or say, yeah, just any hadith. You know, like today
No, because
people
it
have.
differs. So I say Allah Alam, but it is bid'ah. It's bid'ah to reject with no reason. But you are saying it's incorrect based on some other proofs. Okay, in that case we say perfect. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you are rejecting not out of your hawa desire, you know, but based on the rest of the hadith.
But for that you would need huge knowledge.
Exactly, of course, of course.
So,
Of course, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Another hadith. عن ابن أبي جحيفة, it's also متفق عليه Bukhari and Muslim. رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأيت أبي اشترى حجاما فأمر بمحاجمه فكسرت فسألته عن ذلك فقال إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن ثمن الدم متفق عليه. So hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, means Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bought a slave. Okay, and the slave was actually, he could perform cupping. Okay, so hijama. Okay, so then when Rasulullah bought a slave who could perform a cupping, so that slave came to, he came with his father with the cupping equipments, So Rasulullah ordered for that cupping equipments to be destroyed. Okay, so then he says, I asked my father, why did you do so? So then he said, نهى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام عن ثمن الدم. Okay, means Rasulullah عليه الصلاة والسلام forbidden us from the fees of the blood. Okay, so in this hadith, actually there are two things. One is ijtihad of the Sahabi, and the second is the statement of the Prophet. Ijtihad of Sahabi to destroy the cups. Of course, we disagree. By ijma, we disagree. Because it's a valuable thing and destroying it is israf. Okay, so anyway, and the second thing is Rasulullah forbidding from the payment of the hijam. Let's suppose that I will perform hijam on you. So in there, Rasulullah is saying, do not pay him. Okay, and so that is in Bukhari and Muslim, as well as in Sunan Ibn Majah. Just to clarify the point even more, in Sunan Ibn Majah, it says, "Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam an kasb al-hajjam." Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam forbid the income or the payment of the hajjam, the person who performs the cupping. Okay, so all of them, and then by ijma, this hadith is rejected. Because the last thing that Rasulullah performed, that in Hajjat al-Wada, okay, Rasulullah ordered some of the Sahaba to bring someone to perform cupping. So after the cupping, Rasulullah ordered him to be paid. Okay, so in here, so just some of the scholars, just to make it to match with each other, so they say Rasulullah forbid the person to make the cupping to be his main income. Okay, so it is just interpretation. Okay, but the literal meaning does not match with this interpretation. Am I right? Because Rasulullah forbidden from the payment, not from the to make it all the time regular, but payment, any type of payment. Okay, so it is just to try to make the hadith to work, you know. And some of the scholars said it is permissible, but it is evil money. Right. It is bad money. So hadith does not say that. Am I right? Okay, do not take it. Prohibition is for hurma, means prohibited. Yeah. Okay, so it does not match. So anyway, hadith is rejected. The literal meaning of hadith is rejected. Okay, so we say it's permissible for you, if you make cupping on someone, to get paid, or if someone performs cupping on you, to pay him. But what about this hadith? We say hadith is not accepted, but hadith is authentic. Okay, another hadith, again, hadith is in Bukhari. Hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim also. So what does it say? عن عبد الله بن عمر قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الشؤم في ثلاثة في الفرس والمرأة والدار. Okay, Rasulullah says evil superstition is in three things. One is the horse, and the second is wife, and the third is house. Okay, and then Rasulullah forbid it from the superstition. Okay, لا فعل ولا طيارة. Okay, there is no any superstition. Okay, لا عدوى ولا طيرة. Sorry, لا عدوى. There is no any such thing that, for example, طيرة means you. I'm walking. Okay, and then I ask you. So I saw you in my way, and your name is, for example, ثقيل. Okay, means heavy. Means I have to go back home. Why? Because I met you first thing in the morning, and your name is heavy. Means this day is going to be heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, Rasulullah says, إذا تشاءمت فأقدم. Means if you get evil superstition, so then carry on doing it, you know. And then Rasulullah says, لا طيرة. There is not any evil superstition. Rasulullah destroyed that understanding. But Hadith in Bukhari says, evil superstition is in three things. Okay, so the literal meaning of the hadith is rejected by IJMA. We say no superstition, no evil superstition. For example, black cat crosses your way. We do not believe on it.
So, Sheikh, the three things where the hadith in, was it Bukhari, where it says there is evil superstition, horses, women, and...
It is in Bukhari, it is the same hadith, yeah.
And so it says there is such a thing in that hadith.
It says, إِنَّمَا شُؤْمُ. This evil superstition is only in them three things. Al-farad fil farasi wal mar'ati wal dar.
But everyone rejects this.
Yeah, the meaning is rejected.
But
no one accepted.
Isn't that like Aqidah issue almost? Like
superstition, it is actually, it is Aqidah.
It's like big
superstition.
Yeah, it's like quite a big thing, isn't it?
It
because
is, yeah.
even say non-Muslims could use that against us and say, look, you are superstitious. It says in Bukhari, and most brothers today would say, it says in Bukhari, therefore yes.
Yeah. So we say no, even if it's in Bukhari. Hadith is authentic, no doubt. But then, why do we have it in Bukhari? Why Rasulullah said that? We say it could be some specific occasion, you know? Okay, so we're not going to implement one hadith by rejecting many ayat and hadith, you know?
So we can just say it's like a mystery. We don't know what's going on.
Of course, yeah, we do not accept it. Okay, so anyway, and there is another hadith in which hadith is in Bukhari. Rasulullah says, فإن الله قد حرم على النار من قال لا إله إلا الله يبتغي بذلك وجه الله. So he says, Rasulullah says, hadith of Atban bin Malik, very famous hadith. Do you remember? It's the hadith in which one of the Ansari Sahaba invited Rasulullah to his house and gave him some food. And then he said, Ya Rasulullah, here's my house, please can you just pray in my house just for barakah, you know? Okay, toward the Qibla. And then when Rasulullah came, Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, why are you eating in his house and why are you praying in his house? He is hypocrite. Okay, so there was long conversation, and then after all of that, Rasulullah said, doesn't he say La ilaha illallah? Sahaba said yes, but he says it as a hypocrisy. Okay, so Rasulullah said this hadith saying, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ حَرَّمَ عَلَى النَّارِ مَنْ قَالَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ يَبْتَغِي بِذَلِكَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ. So Allah, anyone who says La ilaha illallah for the sake of God, Allah will forbid, Allah will block his flesh from the hellfire. Okay, so it is long hadith, narrated by Utban bin Malik. So the person who invited is Utban bin Malik. Okay, so that was actually the hadith, and then this hadith was narrated. This was narrated in front of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Okay, so then Abu Ayyub al-Ansari said, Wallahi, I swear by the name of God, ما أظن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ما قلت. Okay, so he says ما قلت قط means I swear by the name of God, I don't think that Rasulullah said what you are narrating. So Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, there is no isnad in his time, am I right? Sahabi, okay, and Sahabi is narrating, saying Rasulullah said so and so on. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari says, I swear by the name of God, I don't think that Rasulullah ever said what you are saying. But the hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay? Another hadith, I'm sorry. You know, this hadith is actually, no, it's okay. Hadith is narrated in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, but I'm just mentioning it in here because Imam Tirmidhi, after narrating this hadith, says that I did offer this hadith to Muhammad ibn Ismail, means Imam Bukhari, and he said it's authentic. But hadith is not in Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari, but hadith was confirmed. The authenticity of hadith was confirmed by Imam Bukhari. Hadith is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. And what is the hadith? عن ابن عباس قال رد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ابنته زينب على أبي العاص ابن الربيع بعد 6 سنين بالنكاح الأول ولم يحدث نكاحا. So he says, do you remember when Sayyidah Zainab, the daughter of Rasulullah, so when the mushriks, they insulted Rasulullah, so the sons of Abu Lahab, they divorced. Okay, the daughters of Rasulullah, so Rasulullah was very deeply hurt. Okay, but the wife, the husband of his daughter, Sayyidah Zainab, okay, radiallahu anha, she was not divorced. Okay, her husband said, I swear by the name of God, I'm not going to divorce her. Okay, but he was mushrik in that time. So then they were separated with no divorce. Okay, and we say Islamically, if lady becomes Muslim, okay, but husband stays on shirk, doesn't accept Islam, they will be divorced, there will be separation. Am I right? So then Imam Tirmidhi narrates Hadith of Ibn Abbas, in which after Badr, Ghazwat Badr, so the husband of Sayyidah Zainab, he came, Abu al-As ibn Rabi'a came to Medina, become in the status of Islam. Okay, so then Ibn Abbas says Rasulullah returned Sayyidah Zainab to him with no any new marriage. It is problematic. Hadith is problematic. Imam Bukhari said hadith is authentic, no doubt. Okay, so we say hadith is rejected by ijma. Let's suppose that in the UK some lady becomes Muslim, okay, and according to Shafi'i madhab, as soon as she becomes Muslim, divorce will be there. But in Hanafi madhab, Islam of the acceptance of Islam of the lady does not cause divorce. But we offer the Islam to the husband. If he says no, so him saying no is divorce. Okay, but in both of the cases, the husband of Sayyidah Zainab, he said, I'm not accepting Islam, but I'm not divorcing her also. Okay, but anyway, so it was proper separation and divorce. And Rasulullah returning back Sayyidah Zainab to her husband with no new marriage, it is opposing all of the madhahib. So by ijma, hadith is rejected. But it is authentic. Authenticity is confirmed by Imam Bukhari. Okay. But then, does it mean that Imam Bukhari was ignorant and he didn't know that hadith is weak? We say hadith is not weak, hadith is authentic. But then we need to give some interpretation to the text because text is not matching. Okay. Okay, so it's another very famous hadith. Do you know Abdullah Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu rejecting that that Muawwidhatain, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, it is in Quran, part of Quran. Hadith is in Bukhari. Okay. So is hadith authentic? First of all, authenticity is 100% there. Hadith is narrated by Imam Bukhari, Ahmad and Humaydi and many other sources, and hadith is untouchable. But anyway, Imam Nawawi and Qadhi Iyad and Baqillani and Ibn Hazm, all of them said hadith batil. Okay, hadith is error, hadith is mistake, wrong. Okay, and batil also could mean weak. Okay, but anyway, chain is, so all of the 5 conditions are there. Why? Because Ibn Mas'ud in the different narration, in all of them, he's admitting, he's confirming that Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas is part of Quran. But how come that he comes, Imam Bukhari narrates hadith in which Ibn Mas'ud is denying that Muawwidhatain is from Quran. Okay, so Imam Nawawi and Baqillani, Qadhi Baqillani, as well as Ibn Hazm and Qadhi Iyad, all of them said hadith is batil. Okay, so this hadith is not accepted at all. Okay, but is it weak? We say no, but we don't know what is wrong in there. But Ibn Mas'ud, in the rest of the narrations, he is confirming that Muawwidhatain is part of Quran. So we don't know how come this hadith is there. Hadith is batil, no doubt. Okay, it's not accepted. Yes.
So Sheikh, you mean there's a hadith in, I have heard this accusation from people, non-Muslims. There's a hadith in Bukhari which says that Abdullah Ibn Masud said that he disagrees.
Yes, no. The hadith of Imam Bukhari, there is the proper text. So one of the tabi'in says, قال سألت أبي بن كعب قلت يا أبا المنذر إن أخاك ابن مسعود يقول كذا وكذا فقال أبي سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقيل لي and then he mentioned the hadith. So what is the text of the hadith? He says, one of the tabi'in says, I went to Ubay ibn Ka'b, one of the tabi'in, saying, oh Ubay ibn Ka'b, don't you look at Ibn Mas'ud, he says so and so on. Okay, and what is so and so on? In Bukhari is not mentioned. Okay, and in the narration of Humaydi and Ahmad, Musnad of Imam Ahmad, he mentions what Ibn Mas'ud said. Okay, what was the same hadith, same chain? What was that? Denying the Mu'awwidhatain being part of Quran.
Right.
Okay, so that is actually in what was the exact text? What was the exact statement of Ibn Mas'ud? It is in Ahmad and Humaydi, Musnad of Humaydi. But the Sahih al-Bukhari says the same narration, but he didn't mention what was the statement of Ibn Mas'ud, but he says so and so on. Okay, so some tabi'i coming to Ubay ibn Ka'b and complaining, saying, don't you look at Ibn Mas'ud, he's saying so and so on. And what is that so and so on? Ibn Mas'ud denying. Okay, and now question, how come that in the rest of the narrations of Ibn Mas'ud, reading Quran, etc., in all of them, he's saying that Mu'awwidhatain is part of Quran. And on top of that, Rasulullah says in authentic hadith, anyone wants to read Quran as it has been revealed to me, so let him to read as Ibn Mas'ud reads. So, does it mean that Rasulullah did know that Ibn Mas'ud is denying? So we say, even hadith is in Bukhari, is rejected. It is batil hadith. Okay?
So,
yeah.
Sheikh, can I ask?
Yeah.
Why did Bukhari narrate it as so on, so on?
Yeah,
like something important like that. Why did he miss it out?
No, it could be, there could be two explanations. One of them is that explanation in which it says that Ibn Mas'ud actually said it, so that narration was maybe narrated by the way which is not meeting the conditions of Imam Bukhari.
Oh.
That could be one. Or the second, maybe Imam Bukhari just ignored that part. Why? Because Imam Bukhari wanted to just prove some certain issue, and that part was not that issue.
Right.
Okay, there could be many. But anyway, hadith is in Bukhari, no doubt. Okay.
So
but anyway, hadith is batil, no doubt. We do not accept it.
Because it's big Aqidah issue.
Of course, not only that, but Ibn Mas'ud, in many other narrations, he said that Mu'awwidhatain is part of Quran. As well as Rasulullah says, anyone wants to read Quran as it is revealed to me, so let him to read as Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abd reading. Okay, so means, so the most reliable recitation is the recitation of Ibn Mas'ud, but he is denying part of Quran, so that means that he's kafir. Okay, hadith is batil. We don't know. We don't know why it happened, but we say it is incorrect. It's error.
So, Sheikh, isn't this a case of people like Sahih going against Mutawatir or something?
Exactly, yeah.
So
it's mashhur, and of course, this is mashhur, that Ibn Mas'ud believes that Mu'awwidhatain is part of Quran. It's mashhur, but this is just ahad coming and opposing it. Okay, so we say maybe Ibn Mas'ud said that in some certain circumstances, which is not like general. Okay, so anyway, it's rejected. Ibn Mas'ud never rejected that Mu'awwidhatain is part of Quran. But hadith is authentic and it is in Sahih al-Bukhari. So I'm just giving an examples just to prove that when we say the most authentic book after Quran is Sahih al-Bukhari, we do not mean that each single spot is acted upon in there. Okay, but we say most authentic in terms of authenticity. No one claims anything else, because they say asahhu kitab, most authentic. Sahih and asah, the most authentic. Authenticity is 5 conditions. Acting upon it is not one of the 5 conditions. Okay? Hey Allah. And there is another hadith, also it's a bit controversial, but both of the hadith narrated by Imam Bukhari. Do you know hadith of do you know the illness, like moving from one person to the other, as well as people believing on Safar, month of Safar, you cannot marry, you cannot do anything important, etc. So Rasulullah is saying, hadith is of Abu Huraira. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا عدوى ولا صفر ولا هامة. Okay, and then hadith is very long. Okay, in terms of one Arabi saying, Ya Rasulullah, how come that you are saying that illness does not move from one person to the other when we have our camels? If one camel with illness will come to the group of other animals, all of them become ill. So then Rasulullah said, then what if it moves from one animal to the other? So then where the first camel catched the illness? Okay, very first one. Okay, so that is hadith narrated by Imam Bukhari in about 11 places in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, narrated by Abu Huraira. Anyway, after that, Rasulullah and then in the same time, Ibn Masud used to narrate another hadith. Okay, it both is in. So Ibn Masud used to narrate another hadith in which he says, لا يورد ممرض على مصح, means let the ill person to not to come close to the healthy people. Okay, means it may affect. Okay, so then he says, Abu Salama says, Abu Huraira used to narrate both of them, both of the hadith, and suddenly he stopped narrating the first hadith and carried on narrating that ill people shouldn't come close to the healthy people. Okay, so then someone came to Abu Huraira saying, one of the cousins of Abu Huraira, saying, oh Abu Huraira, how come that you used to narrate another hadith also, which is there is no illness moving? So then Abu Huraira actually denied. He said, I never narrated. Okay, so then Abu Huraira actually said something in Ethiopian language to his cousin. So then he said, do you understand what I'm saying? Abu Huraira said to his cousin, saying, did you understand what I'm saying? So his cousin said, I don't know, I didn't understand. So Abu Huraira said, I said abaytu, means I never said that. I'm denying that I narrated that hadith. Okay, so then Abu Salama says, hadith is still carrying on in Sahih al-Bukhari. Hadith says, قال أبو سلمة فما رأيته نسي حديثا أو غيره. So he says, so I didn't understand. Did he forget that he used to narrate that hadith, or something else happened? Okay, and in the narration of Muslim, Abu Salama says, so I didn't understand. Did he forget that hadith, or was that hadith abrogated? Okay, but Imam Bukhari narrated that hadith, which Abu Huraira later on denied, in 11 places in his book. Okay, so of course, we do have some chapter in Usool of Hadith called a person narrating hadith and after that forgetting. What happens? So we Hanafis, we say hadith is not accepted. Okay, but then Shafi'i say, if he says I forgot, is accepted, but if he says I never did, is not accepted. Okay, but in Hanafi madhab, in both of the cases we do not accept. Okay, so in here Abu Huraira is actually denying that he narrated the hadith, the first one. But he says that لا يريدن ممرض على مصح. Do not let, Rasulullah is saying, do not let the ill person to come close to the healthy people. So he's saying that I narrated the second, but not the first one.
And the hadith about the ill people is found in Bukhari,
is,
and the denial is in Bukhari. Both are in Bukhari.
Both in Bukhari. And even what Abu Salama narrated, the cousin of Abu Hurairah coming and chasing him up, saying, you used to narrate another hadith, and also Abu Hurairah denying that, all of them is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, but as a part, this hadith of illness transferring from one person to the other is narrated in 11 places in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, so then, but is it authentic? 100% authentic. Chain is authentic. Means all of this story happened between Abu Hurairah and Abu Salama, and then the cousin of Abu Hurairah. The cousin of Abu Hurairah, his name is, as far as I remember, Harith ibn Abi al-Munzir, as far as I know. What was Okay, so I forgot his name. Yeah, Harith ibn Abi Dhubab. Harith ibn Abi Dhubab, the cousin of Abu Huraira, who came to argue with Abu Huraira. Okay, so as you can see, it's not that thing which brothers are trying to convince. Okay, we agreed. They disagree with us. Salafi brothers disagree with us that all of the Hadith of Bukhari is authentic. Okay, they disagree with us because, mashallah, Sheikh Nasr Albani, he criticized 3 Hadith saying it's weak. Okay, so there are brothers in Salafi group, they do follow opinion of Albani saying them 3 Hadith are weak. I'm going to narrate them. Okay, so we disagree with them. Okay, but the second step, no one says that. So no one says that all of the Hadith are acted upon. No one says, there is no any ijma. So they try to claim ijma on something where there is no any opinion, as well as they disagree with us on something where there is ijma. Okay, so anyway, so that is a masail. Okay, so majority of them hadith which are narrated in here is rejected by ijma, except the last one. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the hadith which is rejected by some of the scholars. Okay, so the first one is first one is Imam Malik radiallahu anhu. He's rejecting hadith which is later on will be narrated by Imam Bukhari. So what is that hadith? So Imam Bukhari, in the virtues of the Sahaba, he says, "Kunna nukhayyiru bayna an-nasi fi zamani an-nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So Ibn Umar says, we used to say that some of the Sahaba are better than the other Sahaba in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, فَنُخَيِّرَ أَبَا بَكْرٍ ثُمَّ عُمَرَ ثُمَّ عُثْمَانَ بْنَ عَفَّانَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. So he says, Ibn Umar says, in the time of Rasulullah, we used to say that the best person is Abu Bakr, then Umar, then Uthman. And then what Imam Malik says. So Imam Malik, in the Mudawwan of Ibn al-Qasim, he says, Ibn al-Qasim says, سَمِعْتُ مَالِكًا وَسُئِلَ عَنْ عَلِيٍّ وَعُثْمَانٍ. Someone asked Imam Malik, who is better, is it Ali or Uthman? So he says, ما أدركت أحدا أقتدي به في ديني يفضل أحدهما على صاحبه. So Imam Malik says, I have never heard anyone who could be like an imam to be followed in the religion who used to give a priority between Ali and Uthman. Ibn Umar says, we used to say that the best ever is Abu Bakr, then Umar, and then Uthman. Imam Malik is rejecting that. So the statement of Ibn Umar later on will be narrated by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih. So Imam Malik, you can say, rejected the hadith which later on will be included into the Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay. Then Imam Ahmad, mashallah brothers, they respect Imam Ahmad a lot, so let's give them some hadith in which he is denying the hadith which is later on is going to be narrated by Imam Bukhari. So the first is hadith muttafaqun alayhi by both of Bukhari and Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Man mata wa alayhi sawmun sama anhu waliyuhu." Anyone who dies and he has qada of siyam, qada, okay, which he has to fast, and he didn't perform that siyam, Rasulullah says, "Sama anhu waliyuhu." So his relatives, alive relatives, they have to fast on behalf of him. Okay, and Imam Ahmad rejected that. Okay. So hadith later on will be narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. So Imam Ahmad said, لا يصام عنه إلا النذر. So it's only the nazar qada or nazar siyam will be fasted, and the rest of the siyam will not be fasted. Okay, so Ahmad is rejecting. And another hadith, عن أبي هريرة, hadith is again in both of Bukhari and Muslim, متفق عليه. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يتقدمن أحدكم رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين إلا أن يكون رجل كان يصوم صومه فليصوم ذلك اليوم. Abu Huraira narrating hadith from Rasulullah. Do not fast before Ramadan 1 day or 2 days before Ramadan. Okay, except the person who has a habit of fasting, and if that habit falls into the day which is 1 day or 2 days before Ramadan, so he can fast. We Hanafis, we accepted the hadith as it is. Means it's not permissible to fast in the day of Shak. Okay, but Imam Ahmad, what does he say? He says يجب الصيام في يوم الشك. So he says it is compulsory. Okay, so position of Imam Ahmad exactly opposite to what Shaykhain narrated. Rasulullah says do not, Ahmad says you have to, wajib. Okay, so as you can see, so maybe some of the brothers may say, okay, you know, Imam Ahmad, he was before Imam Bukhari. Okay, so we say, first of all, Imam Bukhari says, I did offer my Sahih to Imam Ahmad and Yahya ibn Ma'in, and both of them, they liked my book. Okay, so first of all, Imam Ahmad knew that this hadith is in the book of a junior scholar called Muhammad ibn Ismail Bukhari. Okay, on top of that, the chain by which Imam Bukhari narrating the hadith, Imam Ahmad narrated the same hadith by his own chain. So he knew about this hadith. Okay, so Imam Ahmad opposed the hadith which narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. As well as hadith is narrated by all of the 6 scholars. Okay, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, all of the 6 scholars, in which Rasulullah ﷺ says, Al-ajma'u jubarun, wal-bi'ru jubarun, wal-ma'dinu jubarun, wa fir rikazi al-khumsu. Means, do you know the animals, if my animal will go and destroy, for example, your plant, your grass. So who is responsible? Rasulullah ﷺ says, jubar means, yes, ignore. Imam Ahmad says, if animal will go to destroy in the night, so the owner has to refund. So he is opposing the hadith. Rasulullah says is ignored. Okay. So as you can see, Imam Ahmad is opposing. And the next hadith, an Abi Hurairah. If you remember, there was an incident of adultery. Okay. So then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is narrating the hadith in which Rasulullah sent someone to judge in that case. So in that Rasulullah says, فَإِنْ يَعْتَرَفَتْ فَرْجِمْهَا. So Rasulullah says, if she will admit, okay, so if it will be confirmed, so then punish her. How is the punishment? فَرْجِمْهَا, rajim. Okay, and Imam Ahmad says, in the adultery, punishment is not only rajim. First you have to lash 100 times and then rajim. So he's opposing the hadith. Okay, we say only rajim, as it is in here. Okay, in Bukhari. Again, Bukhari and Muslim. But Imam Ahmad says not only rajim, as it is in the hadith, but first lashes, 100 lashes, and then rajim. He's opposing the hadith. Okay, hadith is in Bukhari. As well as there is a very famous hadith about Rasulullah. Hadith is narrated by Abu Hurairah, and it is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad as well as in Sahih al-Bukhari. So what is the hadith about? So Rasulullah was predicting about what's going to happen after his death, saying that some certain people from Quraysh, they will destroy all of my nation, etc. So then some of the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, what do you want us to do then? So Rasulullah said, when the leaders will come, then just disown them. Okay, just do not follow them. Okay, so this hadith used to be in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. Hadith is in Bukhari. Okay, so then Abdullah ibn Imam Ahmad says, when my father was ill and he was dying, he told me, oh Abdullah, that hadith of Abu Hurairah just deleted from my book. Okay, then he said, because that goes against many other hadith. Why? Because Rasulullah in the mutawatir, you can say it is mutawatir to listen and obey to the leaders. But only one hadith, this hadith which is in Bukhari, came saying, do not listen and do not obey. Okay, so hadith afterward narrated by Imam Bukhari. So while Imam Ahmad was dying, said, deleted from my book. Because it is, so Imam Ahmad couldn't mention any catch on the isnad, except saying that meaning of it is opposing the meaning of the many other hadith. Okay, so as you can see, it's not that easy to say, okay, hadith is in Bukhari, so you are enemy of Rasulullah because you're not accepting hadith of Bukhari. Okay, so it's, you know, as I said, there are 2 ways of approaching the hadith. One is academical and one is Bedouin way. So academical way, which I am showing, which I am demonstrating Imam Ahmad, okay, Tirmidhi, many other scholars, and Imam Nawawi, Ibn Hazm saying that all of that's error, etc. So that is academical way. And the Bedouin way, what we see now in the streets, okay? And most of the time it will be performed, that Bedouin way will be performed by the brothers and sisters who never sat in the circle of Hadith, who never traveled, okay, to seek Hadith or to understand its meaning. They do not have any teachers, they do not have any institutions in which they study, Darul Ulooms or etc., universities. It's just self-taught, okay? So I call them Shuyukh of Islam. Shuyukh of Islam. Well, as well as, do you know there is hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari in which Rasulullah ﷺ says that hadith is accepted by IJMA, okay, but rejected by Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah. What is the hadith? Hadith says, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. Hadith is in Bukhari. What does it mean? It means that there was God and nothing beside God. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. Nothing beside him. Nothing except him. So Ibn Taymiyyah said hadith is not accepted, okay? Because as you know, Ibn Taymiyyah's statement about like pre-eternal universes, okay, universes. So it doesn't mean that this universe is pre-eternal. It means that there was all the time some creature. There is no number one creature, okay? And it is ijma that there is number one creature, okay? This hadith is also confirming the position of the scholars in which we say there was a turn in which there was nothing. Okay, so for the creature number one to come into the existence, there should be some time where there is no any creature. Am I right? Ibn Taymiyyah denied that, so he denied this hadith also. Okay, so anyway, that is just for your information, yes.
Sheikh, isn't that quite a shocking thing for Ibn Taymiyyah to say? Like he's saying, isn't that the same thing the philosophers were accused of, like eternal universe? He's saying there is eternal something.
There is disagreement between Ibn Taymiyyah and the philosophers. Philosophers say this universe that we say is pre-eternal. But Ibn Taymiyyah says this is not pre-eternal, but before this was created there was another, and before that there was another, and there was another, but question, was there number one creature? He says no. So this hadith says there was God and nothing beside God. He says weak. So actually, he's not only denying the meaning, but actually the hadith is rejected by its chain and by its meaning also.
Is that hadith in Bukhari?
It is in Bukhari, number 3191.
So Ibn Taymiyyah even said there's weak hadith in Bukhari?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Oh, so not just Shaykh Albani,
No.
also Ibn Taymiyyah?
Of course. No, even there was some other scholars before Ibn Taymiyyah. For example, Daraqutni, he criticized some of the... So Albani, he didn't make up his own thing, but actually before him, some of the scholars criticized the same hadith which which Albani later on said weak. Okay, but we disagree with all of them. All of the hadith of Bukhari is authentic.
But Sheikh, why are Salafi brothers giving us a hard time about Bukhari when also Ibn Taymiyyah is doing, you know, isn't it like...
It's controversial. No, because I did mention that it's like Bukhari being authentic, most reliable book is principle that everyone knows. And then to use it during the debate with us, to use it, you know, but they do not believe on it. But during the debate you have to win. But then how? It doesn't matter, just crush him, you know. So that's what normally happens.
Sheikh, you said all of the hadiths of Bukhari are
authentic. Yeah, correct.
Because I've had some at least like 4 or 5 hadiths.
Yeah.
Or some very minute percentage of them are weak.
Yeah, means criticized. But then there is a response to all of them.
Okay.
So scholars say this is weak because of this. And then Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and many other scholars came to clarify, saying that they were wrong when they were criticizing this hadith. All of the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari is authentic. Yeah. Now, question. So now we gave so many hadith in which even if chains, hadith were authentic, but we did not accept. Is it something that I made up, innovated, or fabricated from my pocket? I say no. It's only you have to study the Mustalah al-Hadith. For example, I'm going to quote from Nukhbatul Fikr, Nuzhatul Nazar of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, very famous book. So Ibn Hajar says in Nuzhat al-Nazar, he says, ثم المقبول ينقسم إلى معمول به وغير معمول به. And after that, so he mentioned all of the conditions of Sahih and etc. So after that he says, and then the maqbul hadith, means authentic hadith, is split into two. What are these two? So he says, ma'mulin bihi, acted upon, wa ghayr ma'mulin bihi, and non-acted upon ahadith. So the ma'mul bihi and ghayr ma'mul bihi is not two parts of just general hadith, but it is two parts of sahih hadith. So being sahih, it does not necessarily mean that it is acted upon. Because he says, ثُمَّ الْمَقْبُولُ, then the accepted hadith, sahih hadith, ينقسم, splitted, into ma'mul bihi, acted upon, wa ila ghayri ma'mul bihi, and not acted upon hadith. So now, according to the brothers who are looking for the truth, the confusion, I suppose, is sorted. Authenticity, according to the muhaddithin, does not mean acting upon. Authenticity is just chain, 5 conditions. So Imam Bukhari is the most authentic in that sense. Okay, but if you remember in very first lecture I said maybe the Muwatta of Imam Malik is more acted upon. So if the meaning of most authentic being all of the ahadith are acted upon, so maybe this statement is more relevant to Muwatta Malik, because Imam Malik only mentions the ahadith which is acted by some of the scholars. Even he may reject that hadith in Muwatta, but it's acted upon, for example, by Abu Hanifa. Okay, but Imam Bukhari didn't put that condition when he was writing the hadith, you know. But Muwatta, the meaning of Muwatta is musahhal. It is easy. Okay, so it is the hadith which is easy. Why? Because you don't have to test this hadith in terms of can I act or not. Okay, yeah, so that is actually a very important issue. Yeah.
So Sheikh, are you saying the Muwatta is compiled in a way like these are hadiths which can be used for jurists and fiqh?
Yes, of course, it is acted upon a hadith.
So
he didn't include the hadith which is not acted upon. Because it was one of his conditions.
So it's deliberate.
Deliberately, he meant to include only the hadith. So that's why he called that muwatta, means ready to be used.
So it's different from Bukhari, which is just any hadith,
Which meets the
believes
condition,
it.
5 conditions. Okay, so that's why is.
So Sheikh, what if I was to ask how come Imam Malik didn't do another book where he just included all of the hadiths, but you know, like all of his hadiths with a proper chain?
Yeah.
Did he?
No, because if you remember in very first lecture about towards approaching the hadith, we mentioned that Imam Malik said that there's so many hadiths that I narrated, I wish I would be punched twice for each of them. Okay, then some of the scholars asked him saying why. So he said because it was complicated ahadith, and I'm afraid that it will be young scholar, okay, to whom this hadith will be asked about, and he will be unable to answer, and then he will be ashamed to say I don't know also. Okay, so that's one thing. And then Imam Malik by himself is narrating the statement of Zuhri, in which Zuhri says there are many ahadith I never narrated. Imam Malik said, why ya Abu Abdullah? So Imam Zuhri said, because it was not acted upon, so I did not narrate. Okay, so because of that, Imam Malik didn't include everything which was authentic, but only the acted upon ahadith.
So would it be fair to say that Imam Bukhari, his approach is more like historian? He's just collecting
only
all of
pure
the
hadithi.
Yeah.
But Imam Malik, because he was mujtahid in fiqh also, so it was more fiqhi, hadithi combination. But Imam Bukhari purely said that only authenticity. But also he didn't say that all of the authentic, but he said some of them. And there are many others still there. Okay. Anyway, let's speak about the ahadith. So because as I did promise, for example, about Sheikh Nasr al-Albani, so he criticized 3 hadith, and the first one is Hadith Qudsi, in which Allah says, ثلاثة أنا خصمهم يوم القيامة رجل أعطي بي ثم غدر ورجل باع حرا فأكل ثمنه ورجل استأجر أجيرا فاستوفى منه ولم يعطه أجرا. Hadith is in Bukhari. Rasulullah says, Allah says, I am going to chase up 3 people by myself. The first one is anyone who is given by my name to take care of something by my name, and then he will cheat. Okay, and the second person is the person who sells a free man and eats that money. And third person is the person who will bring a labor, some person to work for him, some labor work, and after completing his work, he does not pay him. So, Rasulullah said that Allah said that I will chase off them by myself. Hadith is in Bukhari. Sheikh Nasr said, Sheikh Nasr Albani said, Hadith is weak. We disagree with Albani. 100% Hadith is authentic. And the second Hadith is, Hadith is in Bukhari. Rasulullah used to have a horse, which name used to be Luhayf. Okay, Hadith is in Bukhari. Albani said, weak. We disagree with Albani. And then the third hadith in which Rasulullah said that you are going to see your Lord. تَرَوْنَ رَبَّكُمْ عِيَانًا كَمَا تَرَوْنَ الْقَمَرَ لَيْلَةَ الْبَدْرِ. You are going to see your Lord as you do see a moon in the full moon night. Hadith is in Bukhari. Sheikh Albani said weak. We say Albani is wrong. Hadith is authentic. Okay? Yeah, so maybe that is maybe a summarized version of, you can say, of the topic. Authenticity of hadith does not necessitate acting upon it, as well as when we say that Bukhari is the most authentic collection of hadith, we do not mean that each single hadith in there is accepted and acted upon. I gave you many examples in which hadith was rejected by IJMA, and so many hadith which is rejected by Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad and etc. and some of the other scholars. Yeah.
Sheikh, you said you mentioned 3 hadiths, and you said that Albani said they were weak.
Yeah.
And then you said they're strong.
Yeah.
So why does Albani say they're weak, and why do you say they're strong?
No, because Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, before even Albani criticized them, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani brought the statements of those scholars who say that hadith is weak and replied back to them.
Right, so that's in Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani.
Ibn Hajar, not only him, Kirmani and many other, even Badruddin Aini, Hanafi, all of them scholars, they did explain that.
Okay, so what's the reference for that? Is it
Of what?
of the statement of Ibn Hajar
About what?
that these hadiths are not weak and they're actually strong?
It is in Fath al-Bari,
Right.
as well as in his book called Nuzhat al-Nazar.
Okay.
He did explain that some of the hadith has been criticized, but then in the same place Ibn Hajar says, but all of the criticism has been sorted.
Okay,
Replied.
so Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani came before Albani.
Of course, yeah.
So therefore his
Albani didn't agree with Ibn Hajar.
okay, so but then he must have seen Ibn Hajar's points
Yeah.
about why these hadiths are weak. So
Yeah.
what was his
No, he
response
just
to that?
insisted that what was told before is right. That's it.
Without any
No, just say that hadith is weak. Yeah.
Sheikh, was that the only 3 hadiths that Sheikh Albani?
Only three as far as I know. Allah.
Oh, okay.
But as well as you can add what Ibn Taymiyyah criticized about that hadith.
Oh,
Yeah. But there was some others also, but contemporary scholars, they did say nothing about it. Yeah. But anyway, then Badruddin Aini and Ali al-Qari, many scholars, they did reply. Okay, so they brought, confirmed, they have proven the authenticity of each single hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. That's it.